Hi, and welcome to Long Live the Queen, where we talk about the women who made history. And by we, I mean the royal we, because it's just me. Today we're going to talk about Marguerite de Valois. And one person said that St. Bartholomew's wasn't a day, it was a season. Because it didn't just last that day. Like, most of it was on that day. But it continued for quite a while.
Wow.
The Parisians genuinely believed they had received orders from their king to protect the royal family from the Protestants. That's the general word on the street. You ask a guy on the street. He's like, well, the king wanted us to kill the Protestants. He said kill them all because they're dangerous and we needed to protect him from that. So they weren't even mad at the king. They were just like, oh yeah, these riots were required. And because of all these riots and subsequent conversions, forced or otherwise, the Huguenot community in France went from 16,500 to fewer than 3,000. Less than a fifth of them were left.
Wow.
Yeah, and the Pope commissioned paintings depicting the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre as, like, this was a good day for Catholics. They were just seen as excellent Catholics.
Wow.
So Margot wrote about all this in her memoirs, and she stated that she was horrified by the massacre and hid several prominent Protestants in her quarters and refused to let the assassins in. And hers is the only eyewitness account we have from the entire royal family. She's the only one who wrote memoirs that we have today.
Wow.
So I'm going to say it's true. She is a badass. but
I
we only
think
have
so.
her version of the story.
I'm inclined to agree.
Yeah. Not long afterward, her mother suggested to Margot that she annul her marriage. She's like, look, this marriage is a disaster. Let's just get rid of it. But Margot did not trust her mother anymore and assumed her mother was up to no good.
You think?
So she said, I suspected the design of separating me from my husband was in order to work some mischief against him. And she reportedly also added to her mother that they absolutely could not annul it because they had sex and she was his wife in every way. So she was like, sorry, lots of sex happening here. Can't be annulled. And I like to think that was her middle finger to her mother. She was done with this. She was you can't boss me around anymore. I've had sex. So Margot was now the Queen of Navarre. She didn't have to listen to her mother anymore in theory, but they were also prisoners at French court. They couldn't go home to Navarre either.
Even though they're married, he still couldn't go home?
And he's the King of Navarre, yeah. And they're like, you're the King of Navarre, but you're here. Like, we can just put you in the dungeon if we want. And we're not, so we're nice. So they're still in France. And Margot's husband was understandably pretty upset about his treatment around this wedding. He was not a happy man. King Henri was being held at French court, along with his cousin, and he got to plotting with his youngest brother-in-law, Francois. Remember Hercule? He hangs out with Protestants. So he's been a Protestant sympathizer since childhood. And the king still didn't trust his wife, Queen Margot, because she was Catholic. He was not sure if she was in on that plot. Her older brother, King Charles, was struggling with his mental health, in case you didn't see that coming from the kill them all comment. Yeah. After the massacre,
Wondered if
he was haunted by it.
A little off.
Yeah. He would go between blaming himself and blaming his mother. He wasn't sure who was to blame for this massacre. But sometimes he'd just, like, cuss her out. And sometimes he'd be like, I'm the worst king ever. This was really...
Oh.
It wasn't going well. And Margot's other brother, the Rat, had been elected King of Poland. It was a lifetime position elected by the rich people in Poland. And they were like, hey, we need a king. You have a spare son. So the Rat was the King of Poland. And it was a lifetime position. You just didn't inherit. Your son wouldn't necessarily be the King of Poland. When you died, they would elect a new king. And Margot's youngest brother was indeed still a Protestant sympathizer. Francois was religiously tolerant. And he was seen as a much better compromise for the people who wanted to compromise. They were like, look, he's Catholic, but he does actually seem to think we shouldn't kill the Protestants. So he was actually kind of the middle guy. And they teamed up with the King of Navarre. to potentially overthrow the government and make him king, even though he had 2 older brothers. And this plot was supported by people known as the malcontents, which also a rad nickname, and describes them well.
It also feels like it would be an amazing name for a band.
Yep, the malcontents. Queen Margot refused to participate in the plot, not wanting to go against her family. After all that, she's just like, let's not rock the boat, guys. Let's just stay here as prisoners in France.
Well, I mean, I can only imagine. She literally saw people being killed in front of her. Mm-hmm. Like, any tenuous hold on any kind of, like, normalcy.
But her option is to go to Navarre and live with the Protestants. She didn't want to do that either.
Yeah, oh.
And she started a relationship with a man named La Mole. He was a French nobleman. He was Margaret's lover, and he is likely the one who took her virginity because her husband was still actively avoiding her. Meaning that when she told her mother she was the king's wife in every way, she was likely just attempting to save his life. They probably hadn't had sex yet.
Wow.
And La Mole was involved in this civil war that was going on all around her, and he was captured, executed, hung, drawn, and quartered.
Oh, jeez.
So she did have a lover, and then he was killed. King Charles of France was mentally unwell and physically unwell. He likely had tuberculosis. He was so ill that his bedsheet started turning pink because the blood was seeping out of his pores. He was coughing blood, and he died at the age of 23. And he only had a 2-year-old daughter, and France didn't count girls. And in any case, she was sickly since birth, and she died when she was just 5, so that wouldn't have even been a long-term viable option. The king is dead, long live the king. The new king was Margot's older brother, the Rat, King Henri of Poland, and now King of France. Her mother stayed in charge until her son returned to France, which he did after stealing some of Poland's crown jewels. So he was a charmer. Dear Eyes, remember him? And Poland declared their throne abandoned and elected a new king. They were like, well, I guess this guy doesn't want the job. Let's get a new one.
That's funny.
And now that he was King Henri, he needed a wife. So 23-year-old King Henri married 21-year-old Louise of Lorraine. And if Lorraine sounds familiar, remember when Claude married the Duke of Lorraine? This bride is his cousin. So, siblings are married to cousins. Double alliance. For about a week, because a week after Henri's marriage, Margot's last remaining sister died in childbirth at the age of 27.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, both of Margot's sisters had died in childbirth. And her mother had almost had when she had the twins. So, childbirth would have been a super scary thing for her. And Margot had probably what we would consider an open marriage. She had boyfriends, and her husband had mistresses, and that was just the way it was. In fact, one time, her mom was trying to catch her with one of her lovers, and her husband warned her, like, hey, don't meet up today. Your mom is going to try and catch you. Like, he knew about it and warned her. And so then she went to church instead because she wanted the people who were spying on her to see her at church. And she had La Mole, but then she had a handful of other noblemen who were... And she had boyfriends.
You know, I kind of actually love that. I kind of love that, like, they made the best of, like, neither one of them were exactly happy. Yeah. And so they were like, let's just agree to live our own lives.
I don't hate this. I don't hate this for them. The king and his cousin were kept at French court for about 3 years. And with the help of the king's youngest brother-in-law, Francois, or Hercule, they decided on an escape plan, but no one told Margot. They escaped without her.
Of course.
She's always forgotten. Her entire life. She's just forgotten. The king and his cousin booked it back to Navarre, where they immediately returned to Protestantism. Margot was put under heavier guard in France, because no one told her about the escape. But her brother, little Hercule, Francois, he continued to fight until his sister was released. So 3 cheers for Francois, the troublemaker. He's using his powers for good. He was like, I'm not going to leave my sister here. Margot's husband apologized for abandoning her. And she was like, okay, thanks, but I don't really want to join you in Navarre. Like, jerk. And her beauty at this point was seen, it was described as more divine than human. So she was very pretty. Margot's mother and brother were again hostile to Margot, and now she wanted to go to Navarre. She's like, you know what? Protestants are better than this. So I would like to go. And at first they said no, but eventually they're like, fine, just go to Navarre, go away. Her marriage was still fully open, and she seemed like she was friends with her husband. Like, they weren't romantically involved. But then one of her lovers, named Poussey, which is spelled how you would spell it if you were trying to be funny, Poussey was murdered, her lover, by the husband of another one of his lovers. So he had a few people too. And then Margot got a new lover, her husband's minister, because he was there. And her husband had a mistress named Diane, which is the same name that her father's mistress had been. So I feel like that might be awkward.
A little triggering.
And Margot then started to become ill. Like a lot. Various illnesses. And it's possible she was being poisoned. The following year, Margot's younger brother, Francois, died of malaria. The Valois royal children had been 10, and now we're down to 2. 31-year-old Queen Margot, Queen of Navarre, and 33-year-old Henri the Rat, King of France, are the only 2 siblings left.
Oh.
Margot's brother was the last male Valois left. If he didn't have a son, the throne would go to the first Prince of the Blood, and the first Prince of the Blood was Margot's husband, King Henri. So if the rat dies, Margot's Queen of France.
I have never wanted the rat to die more.
I know. And this man was the King of France. In all the stories, he did a very good job being king, but from my perspective, he's a rat.
And I fully support that.
Yeah. And Margot decided to blow up her marriage because she was over all this. And she made an alliance with the Duke of Guise, her old crush, and raised an army against her mother and her husband. She was running off with her old boyfriend.
Oh, I love this so much.
I know. The queen took it as a personal insult and a curse from God that she had to deal with this daughter. She was like, why? Why would God give me this blight that is this child? And Margot was then...
Get it, Marguerite.
Yep. Margot was then besieged by her husband. He was fighting back. So now she's under siege. And she sent to the Duke of Guise for help. She was like, help, my husband his army's here. Like, I need backup. And he was in the north. So he asked King Philip of Spain, her old brother-in-law, the one who was married to her sister Elizabeth, for help. Like, hey, come up and help us. But neither of them got there in time. And the Catholic royal army was allowed in. They convinced the people to rebel against Margot. And because the whole city was suffering from plague and starvation. They were like, we can't just be... Like, we have to get things under control. We have to be able to get rid of our dead bodies. But Margot was warned, and she escaped the city on horseback. High-speed chase, and I assume it was a white Bronco. I have to get an OJ joke in. I love that so much. She was able to get to her most dependable castle, her most secured castle, but also her most run-down castle. But somehow she brought her bed with her, so I don't know how high-speed this chase was, but she was a queen. She needs her bed. So she's in this, like, decrepit, fallen-apart castle, but she's got her bed.
But she's got her feather bed.
Yeah, yeah.
A girl has needs.
Yeah. And the only people loyal to her were on her payroll at this point. The people she was paying were loyal to her, but she was in a spot. And one of those people was her captain of the guard, who was a young hottie named Jean d'Aubiac. And he reportedly said when he first saw her, if I could go to bed with her, they could hang me an hour afterwards. So
whoa.
He was smitten. And the Duke of Guise and the King of France made peace by both completely throwing Margot under the bus. So I like to think she made herself feel better with her captain of the guard, because these jerks. And her husband threatened to kill her lover because now he's mad. And so she ran back to her mother, and she nearly drowned on the way. But she did get there. Imagine running back to your mother. Like, that's the safe spot. She was in a pickle. And Margot was captured once she got to her mother. She was handed over to her husband's custody and was put under castle arrest, and her lover, the captain of the guard, was hanged. The execution was botched, and he was still writhing in pain when they threw him in his grave. I know, it's almost like the most cute love story ever. Like, I just wanted her to run off with her captain of the guard and live happily ever after. And a few months later... Yeah, it's sad. Her whole life is just sad event after sad event.
I know.
A few months later, Guise and the king were fighting again, because that peace didn't last long. And Margot's jailer sided with Guise, so she was like, "You can go. You don't have to be stuck here anymore." But she decided to stay because it was safer. She's like, "I don't want to go out there. Like, everyone's crazy and fighting. I'm not leaving." And
that's hilarious.
Her sister-in-law, the widow of her brother Charles, didn't need all the money she was given as Dowager Queen, so she gave half of it to Margot to live off of, which is really nice.
That is really nice. Yeah. She needed something good to happen. Yeah.
But then word would have arrived to France that Margot's former sister-in-law had been executed by Queen Elizabeth of England. So Mary Queen of Scots is now dead. Executed by Queen Elizabeth. And then her childhood crush, the Duke of Guise, he was killed by her brother. So he's gone now too. And in 1589, Margot's mother died. Queen Margot had been left out of her mother's will entirely. So she was neglected for the last time.
Whoa.
Yeah. I can't even imagine how she felt. Like, she would have been sad, but also it must have been a little bit of a relief. Like, Catherine de Medici was a force.
100%.
Yeah.
Wow.
And just months later, Queen Margot's brother, King Henri the Rat, he died. He was assassinated while on the toilet. So I love that for him.
It feels like a good end.
Yeah. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. The king is dead. Long live the king. The new king was King Henri of Navarre, Margot's husband. So Margot's now the Queen of France. And
but she's still in jail.
She is the last, well, by choice. They let her go, and she was like, "No thanks." She is the last remaining Valois. Her mother's healthiest but least favorite child was now the Queen of France and Navarre. In 1591, a man mysteriously entered her bedchamber and attempted to shoot her. Failed, but tried, so that's just a random fun fact. Her sister-in-law then died, so she lost the income she'd been receiving. She'd been living off the money her sister-in-law had been sending her.
Oh, no.
And to top it all off, her husband wanted to marry his mistress, so he wanted her to go.
Yeah.
And her husband had become Catholic to keep France. And now he wanted to just replace his whole wife. She didn't want to marry a Protestant. He turns into a Catholic, and then he's like, "Oh, by the way, now we should get divorced." And she had stayed married to him in the first place to save his life. So he offered Margot a payout to just leave. Like a good financial pay. And she had just lost her income. Plus a yearly income. Plus a house and anywhere in Paris that she wanted. So she's like, "Okay, yeah, I'll do that." Like, she had an open marriage anyways. It wasn't like she really... If he's going to financially support her and she's going to get a house anywhere in Paris that she wants, she can just live her best life in this house. So she's like, "Yeah, I'm here for it."
I have my fingers crossed that there is no but.
No, eventually the Pope annulled their marriage on a lot of grounds. They hadn't wanted to get married in the first place, neither of them. They hadn't had children. They both had many lovers. So everyone was like, "Yeah, this seems like a good ending to this." But the king's mistress had died in childbirth. So not bad for Margot necessarily, but he was not able to marry her. Because she died during this process. And that's when Margot wrote her memoirs, partially in an attempt to repair her reputation. So that's where we get all the memoir accounts of everything that happened, was this time. That's what she did in her house anywhere in Paris. She just sat down and wrote her memoirs like the artsy girl she is. And King Henri did remarry. He married Margot's distant cousin, Marie de' Medici, of the Medici family. And Margot was allowed to return to court, and she was being called the king's sister, and she became the crazy fun aunt of the royal children. And, of course, she was still the last living Valois, so anyone who had supported the Valois, they were like the matriarch, the only one left, the only Valois left to follow. And Margaret became the go-to for anyone looking for justice having to do with atrocities committed during the Wars of Religion, so that was her main focus. And in 1610, her husband, King Henri, died at the age of 56 by assassination. He was in his carriage, and it was stopped in traffic and stabbed. So the king is dead. Long live the king. And the new king was his 9-year-old son with his new wife, King Louis XIII. So we're back to a child king. And Queen Margot died in 1615 at the age of 61 after becoming gravely ill. And having died during a time of peace, one of the only Valois that died during a time of peace, she was met with a huge outpouring of the beloved Princess of Valois. Her funeral was a big deal. Everyone was like, oh, we'll never forget you. We'll also never make a TV show about you, but we'll never forget you. She needs a TV show or a movie or a series of movies.
She needs, yes.
Yeah, and that is where I'll leave it for now. What did you think about Marguerite of Valois?
I think she was pretty much a badass later in her
kind
life
of hashtag
when she
goals.
kind of like came into her own. But like my heart genuinely bleeds for her.
Yeah, it's
because
so
her
sad.
whole life she got the rawest of the raw deal.
She's one of those people where you're like, the journey was really hard, but it turned into an amazing person. But because she had to go through so much, I think, all of those things came for her.
Oh,
She's the best. I love her.
How her life, like, ended. Like, the last, like, I feel like those are, like, you know how you, like, typically say, like, the golden years of your life is, like, when you're older and you're past childbearing age and you get to be that grandparent age and whatnot. I really, truly think that was the highlight of her life, those golden years when she was in Paris.
And she never had kids or grandkids, but she got to be, like, the fun aunt of the royal children. Because her husband had been, like, her brother.
I have this, like, feeling that maybe, like, she wanted those kids to have something she never had.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I bet
she's like, I was a royal child, and I would have loved a cool, fun aunt, because no one remembered I was there.
Yeah, like, she just kind of lived in the shadows and was forgotten and looked over because, you know, as a child of being, you know, the 7th sibling, she wasn't important.
Yeah.
Nobody thought she would ever become queen.
Queen of France.
Like, it was impossible.
It's insane. And all because her mother was trying to do a PR marriage. Like, oh, let's look like we're fair.
Right. That is, like, probably the best comeuppance of Catherine de Medici.
I think so, too.
Like, ever. Like, I love that. Like, that was probably, like, I hope that Marguerite smiled and was like, yeah.
Now
like,
who's the Queen of France?
Serves you right.
Yeah.
Yeah, now who's the Queen of France?
Yep. Yep. So like, I love it. Like, I think part of why she doesn't have more stuff about her is she didn't have children or grandchildren, so there weren't, like, descendants of her to prop her up. But I very much would be in favor of any kind of story about her, whether it's a book or a TV show or a movie or... I'm here
Let's
for
get
it.
it.
Yeah, she's very cool.
Let's start a movement.
Queen Margot is like the coolest queen ever. Thank you for recording with me. It was a long one, but there's a lot in her life.
It was. I actually had to go to low power mode.
Oh, no.
Like, oh.
Sorry. We finished.
And I just have to say, my phone had like 100% when we started.
Thanks for listening.
looked away at the first glance. If you tasted poison, you could've spit me out at the first chance. If I was some paint, did it splatter on a promising grown man? And if I was a child, did it matter if you got to wash your hands? All I used to do was pray. Would've, could've, should've. If you'd never looked my way, I would've stayed on my knees. And I damn sure never would've danced with the devil at 19. And the God's honest truth is that the pain was heaven. And now that I'm grown, I'm scared of ghosts. Memories feel like weapons. And now that I know, I wish you'd left me wondering. If you never touched me, I would've gone along with the righteous. If I never blushed, then they could've never whispered about this. And if you never saved me from boredom, I could've gone on as I was. But Lord, you made me feel important, and then you tried to erase us. You're a crisis of my faith. Would've, could've, should've. If I'd only played it safe, I would've stayed